This week on Intrigued Full Effect.
I'm still encouraged to keep on fighting. Just keep on fighting and do everything I can as a father to get those answers that my family needs.
I'm Chandrea Thomas, and welcome to episode 51. In this podcast, I talk about curious cases, disappearances, and other stuff. And today I'm doing an update on the disappearance of 24-year-old geologist Daniel Robinson, who vanished from a job site in the middle of the desert in Buckeye, Arizona. All of this happening on the morning of June 23rd of 2021. Daniel's Jeep was also found by investigators wrecked in the desert weeks later, not too far from his work site, leaving lots of clues and questions that are still unanswered. This is a case that I first covered in April of this year. I caught up with Daniel's father, David, to find out more about where the case stands right now and the new discoveries surrounding Daniel's disappearance. He also shared some new pictures from the inside of Daniel's apartment that I've never seen before. And of course, the conversation was candid as expected. This is what happened.
So, David, I know that we haven't really chatted since earlier this year when I did the first podcast episode, but I want to get an update on where things stand today. I know there's been a lot of things happening since we talked last. The first thing I want to ask you is, how are you doing right now, and how are things kind of moving along for you with your investigation?
Well, I'm doing okay. Just the fact that I have to continually fight for urgency in my son's case after over a year, that's troubling. But you know what? My spirits are still high. Still optimistic I will find answers. I'm still optimistic that I will bring my son back home. So I'm still encouraged to keep on fighting. Just keep on fighting and do everything I can as a father to get those answers my family needs.
Mm-hmm. And so I know as far as the investigation goes, you had a new investigator. You had just gotten one when I spoke to you last. How is that going? Have you guys discovered anything new, or what about the DNA testing, the forensics, and all that kind of stuff?
Well, yeah, my investigator, second investigator, he and I no longer work together as well. We came to the conclusion I wouldn't need a private investigator at this point. I can continue on doing some of the things I'm doing currently. But definitely, some of the things that he left with me, information-wise, I'm able to move forward with some of the information I have to try to push outside law enforcement agencies to look into this case. There's some very troubling things. Of course, I can't put in public as part of my investigation, and to make sure that I put it into proper hands for them to investigate further.
Well, I know you said that before you were going to test some DNA, I think, some things on his car, his phone information. Were you able to kind of move along with that process? Can you say anything about that?
Yes, I can. Well, you know, of course, I'm a chain of doing many interviews and also meetings with other law enforcement agencies. I've been pushing very hard to have a team that's working with me. I was able to convince an outside agency to look into my son's case. Like I said, there's a lot of information I was able to give to them. They piqued their interest, and so they took upon themselves to help me with the forensics. And so one of the things, they haven't taken care of the car and the clothing, the things I really need as well. But they were able to take the electronics, the things like the two cell phones that was found out there near the crash site through my searches, as well as the cell phone of my son that was found out on the scene, the laptop that was found on the scene, everything in my son's apartment, electronic-wise, that would yield some type of information that could yield information that would link to why Daniel was missing or people he was talking to in the days coming up to him becoming missing. So they was able to take those electronics. I'm really happy about that. But again, I'm still working very hard to get the forensics done on the clothing, which my family and I don't readily say that, hey, that's Daniel's clothing, because we can't identify it. But we want to get the forensics done on that, as well as the red transfer plate on the vehicle, as well as the airbags and the entire vehicle. So I'm still working on that with outside agencies. I'm also been asking the public to try to raise some funding just in case I can't get law enforcement to do it myself. But in the meantime, yes, so I'm working very hard to try to get those forensics done.
Mm-hmm. Now, I know the searches were a really big deal in the beginning. You guys have conducted tons and tons of searches. Has that really pretty much slowed down? And then on top of that, I remember you talking about the well last time, and I saw the video of the well and all of that. Where does all of that stand?
Well, as in the searches, of course, I had a trouble with that. First going out there to searches, everything's funded by the GoFundMe and also my own personal income. Some of the things that we have is all the equipment that will keep the volunteers safe, the things I needed for the searches. I've been begging law enforcement to come in to help in any of my searches. Since that failed, a lot of those monies, like I said, been utilized constantly to keep the searches going. To keep the searches going, I broke it down to not every week to every other week. That didn't work. And then I did it sparingly and to the point where it now is at pause. So my search is now going forward until I get those fundings to be able to bring a public search. I have private search. For instance, this month here, I have a private search that's consisting of forensics experts, scientists, and things like that. And we'll be doing strategic searching, not something that we're going out and looking, but in certain areas, we're actually looking at, doing their expertise to determine some things on the forensic side of things. So as for now, when it comes to searching, that's what's going on with that. As for now, everything else is on pause for just for a little moment.
Okay, so the well situation is on pause. Nothing has been able to move forward on that.
Well, the well situation is part of my investigation as well. That's why I put that out in the public. Some of my concerns about first of all, one thing was for sure in my investigation, you have to always look at the person who last spoke with a person and kind of vet their story out very well. I have went on the ground myself, go by everything that was told to me. The suspicion is that second well site, not the one that they're saying that my son was located, last seen at, but the second well site was more reasonable to say the story that was given is the well site that my son was last seen. And then when I did my investigation outside of what Buckeye have done, they did not take a camera down in the well, down in the water. They stayed above the surface of the water. I was able to get my own company in there, look into the well, found very, very, a lot of things in that well that's very disturbing. That would suggest somebody's covering up something, things that shouldn't have been in that well in the first place. That's part of the things I wanted to put in the public so the public can be aware of what's going on. I tried to put those things out to law enforcement. They're not taking it serious. I'm still working on outside law enforcement agents to look at that well, because that well need to be checked thoroughly.
And that's the other part too, as far as you going through your own investigation, kind of developing your own new questions, because I'm sure as you discover new things, new questions come about. Is there anything that you can say that you've discovered that you can discuss or talk about at this point that was kind of surprising to you or that we didn't talk about before? Because I imagine you found out some things.
Well, yeah, of course, I can't show I'm pulling my cards out. There's a lot of things I have found out. For instance, some people's relations, people who may know each other, things like that. So those things are some things I'm working on right now, tying those things together. But like I said, a helpful part would be with the forensics that would definitely tie in all of those things. But also, as you probably know, aware of the last time, I've been putting out a lot in the public about the timeline. Getting some information back from my son's cell phone, I was able to piece together a good timeline. And the timeline that the last person that saw my son gave is wrong. It's all wrong. And that would cause you to have to, as an investigator, have to really, like I said, again, the last person that's seen a person, you should scrutinize that testimony and make sure it's accurate. The timeline didn't match. The guy said that my son was there with him around 9 o'clock and he left at 9:15. But the evidence with my son's cell phone and the text message that he sent to this man suggests that that's not the fact. My son made a last call to him at 9:28, for instance. That was the last call my son ever made from that time before he went missing. So those were mess. If my son had left at 9:15, why would he be calling at 9:28? The other part is why his text messages were around 8 o'clock asking closer to 9 to asking for directions, and that those questions wasn't answered. So I'm taking them upon myself to understand my son that he made the call at 9:28, still trying to figure out how to get to that well site.
Mm. And then just so we want to clarify again, the second guy who allegedly saw your son really did not see him, or that it was a mistake with that. I remember there was a second person who supposedly saw him out there that morning. What is the full story on that, just so we all understand?
Well, the problem is he was brought to me last year probably around this time last year. He was brought to me through a search. The guy said that he's a federal law enforcement officer, and he had a story that he seen my son. Of course, I didn't really ready to understand his story. I sent him over to my investigator at the time, Jeff McGrath, who was supposed to vet his story, him and also one of my search coordinators. So they later brought it back to me and said, yeah, they vetted his story. His story is correct. He is a federal law enforcement agent, and he was out there that day. So that was a story that I believe. I put it out in the public through my family press conference. But later around December, I found out that those stories was not true. And when I say it's not true, I'm not necessarily saying he wasn't out there, but who he say he is as a person. He's not a federal law enforcement officer. In fact, he has some criminal history that would suggest some really, really striking things that was really bad and problematic to his credibility. The fact that he changed his story from seeing my son at 1 p.m. around 1 o'clock that day to 10 o'clock that morning, that's another problem. And the reason why he changed the story is when my investigator came out and said the first initial crash happened around 1. I guess he wanted to be associated with that. He backed the story up. So to make a long story short, I found this story not credible. And not only that, I also see him as a suspect. The second part is I did vet that, did ask the Buckeye Police Department about that, because he did talk to the Buckeye Police Department as well. The Buckeye Police Department told me that they vetted his story and they believe his story. So only difference is I don't believe his story, but the Buckeye Police Department does. His credibility with me is shot, and also the fact that he changed his story. I also see him as a possible suspect.
This is really interesting. So the guy that claims he saw him, you're saying the story changed a little bit. Some people believe what he says, but you don't believe him for whatever reason. Is that because there are some things that you discovered on your own, or you think there was things just didn't fit for you from the beginning?
Well, it's several things. Like I say, he changed the story from 1 o'clock to 10. The other part, he's not a federal law enforcement agent. He do have a history of posing to be a law enforcement officer. The other thing is, it's a question that was given. He said my son directed him to a location. He said he was out there target practicing with his children. He saw my son the first time through a scope of his rifle, and then he ended up seeing him the second time near a river bed called Wagoner Wash, where he had actually literally spoke to my son. He said my son directed him to the proper place to shoot out there, the places that people target practice. And it's true, people do go out there to target practice, but my son directed him to the proper location. Now, mind you, through my Q&As that I have a person that asked a question that made a lot of sense that I didn't think of. Hey, look, how do your son give a man a direction in a place that he never been before? And that was key to me. And that made me think, like, how can my son direct you to where to shoot? And that's his first time ever being out there in that desert, ever coming to that well site. So that also, again, shoot his credibility and also point him as a possible suspect.
Wow, that is weird. That's a question that's a really good question. Wow. Right. Okay, so you have that going on. As far as you guys being able to get coverage, it looks like you guys have been able to really draw attention to this case, but you're also using that to like help other families with their cases as well who don't, get the same coverage as you. So how is that going?
It's going very well. I was able to get a day of remembrance. I really was happy with that, the turnout to be able to help other families tell their story, as well as get those resources. I really appreciate some of the resource tables that came out to give the family resources. I'm really proud of the Candlelight Vigil that I had in the past as well, to do the same thing, bring attention to my son's case, but at the same time help other families. And also the Q&As and everything as the other events that we're leading right now to do just that, bring attention. The Daniel Robinson Foundation that will be launching pretty soon is doing the same thing to help other families. So what I'm saying is all that is birthed by, I'm a father that came out here searching my son. When the first time that happened with a family, you don't think about missing persons as much. You may hear it on the news, you may hear stories here and there, but when it strikes your family, then you get to understand what other families are going through. Of course, I became passionate, and that was the birth of the Daniel Robinson Foundation, as well as the ideas to try to help other families along the journey of searching for Daniel.
As for Daniel's apartment in Tempe, Arizona, David says there was some misrepresentation of the condition of his apartment. This is what he had to say during a live stream on his YouTube channel.
There was a ID channel episode that came out called Disappeared. Again, I just want to say up front, I'm not saying anything negative on the network or their abilities to tell the story. I really appreciate them really helping out the family, get Daniel's story out there. I just want to clear up some facts that I heard about that, heard on the episode that really was disturbing to me. Of course, he had his mother, Daniel's mother, as well as his brother on the show, as well as a clip of an interview that I did as well that they was able to use. But anyway, a couple things that was said, but one thing in particular that bothered me the most is the perception or the ideas that was given to people about Daniel's apartment. And, you know, a lot of times the apartment does reflect a mindset of a person. Sometimes when you're going through things, you might not want to clean up. You're feeling sad or feeling sick or whatever case may be, you might not want to clean up. And I get that. You know, there's little parts of things that Daniel probably really just expressed to his parent, when I say his parents' mother, that he probably don't express to me because she's a mother, I'm a father. But ultimately, I just want to make sure that you guys understand that Daniel, what was portrayed on that show, there was said that it was dirty dishes in the sink, plural. There's also trash all over the place. And I mean, it was really disgusting portrayal of Daniel's apartment. As you know, I've been here since June 26th searching for Daniel. I've hired a private investigator. We didn't have access to Daniel's apartment. No one did. But we was able to get access to that apartment. So, of course, I'm doing the investigation on my own. I have a lot of those pictures, the original pictures, pictures that was there, exactly the way that Daniel left his apartment that morning he left on June 23rd to never come back home. But the portrayal that's on the episode is different, far different from the realities of Daniel. So I just want to clear those things up. And but like I said, the episode will have you believe that he was in disarray. He was going through some really mental state of mind based on the way he was keeping himself or keeping his place. Here you go. All right, this is Daniel's apartment. First of all, I want to say this is his picture of his entertainment center. And you can say he got little boxes of joysticks and things like this, gaming type stuff, PSP player and memory card type backup hard drive. But anyway, if you can look really hard in the picture, you see this picture right here came from the Buckeye Police Department. That's the two officers there, Officer Biffin, as well as another officer. And it was led into that apartment. I was supposed to be going in there with them, but to make a long story short, the apartment complex have their own legal issues with that. They didn't want the police involved in there as well. But the police was able to, I was there. Detective Biff was able to convince them, just let them in, just look around. And the agreement was from the landlords that he couldn't touch anything. He can look around, he can take a couple pictures, and that's it. They had to walk in there with them, which the landlord is there with them as well. But they definitely didn't want the family in it at all because then you can give consent and they were looking out for their own legal matters. So, of course, all right, we're good with that. The second picture I'm going to show you is the, it would go to another angle from standing in front of the TV and looking back the other direction. As you can see, the floor is clean as well as, you know, he's a bachelor, he's a young man. And he may not have the, he may have some things there like papers or, for instance, the pipe that's on the ground behind the chair, you know, things they use for work or whatever. He got his, you see the cabinet over there. He got his, in this area, he'll have his weight, pull up bars or, you know, you name it. His little device he used to carry boxes, you know, hand truck. And as well, if you look in this corner over here, this is actually the canopy that you guys heard about with the Caitlin that he left in Caitlin's backyard. That's the canopy there. There's a table, but that's the canopy if you guys want to know. That's the canopy that he left at the young lady's house. He went to go retrieve that belongs to him. Why they had it, why they were those two that night, he spent the night there. Why they was in the backyard with that canopy, I don't know. So that's another story as well. All right. But anyway, keep going. Back the other direction again, you can see the television there. You can see how clean this apartment is here. This bag here is definitely Jeff McGrath's bag, my former private investigator. That's his bag. The evidence tape and things like that. He's getting ready to do some work, right? So that's what the picture was. You can see on this corner here, of course, I changed the locks. So that's a box that I got from Home Depot, Lowe's, one of those guys. That when I changed the lock. So once I got access to the apartment, I didn't want even the landlords to be able to come in and to mess with anything because everything had to stay exact way Daniel left it. As here, you guys see the bottles of water that Daniel's sister bought him. There's 2 cases missing. It's supposed to be a total of 5. 2 was in that vehicle. But that's water. He's a geologist. He need water out there working in the desert. On that episode of Disappeared, they betrayed him as having trash coming out have bags of trash on the doorknob, which is offensive. But this trash is clean. Nothing hanging out. Nothing, I can tell you when I looked in, there's nothing but papers and one little plate, of paper plate of food that, he just ate left over. And also, you can see right here is a hand warmer and the counter looked clean. He even used an air freshener to keep his place smelling well. The next thing you can see is his kitchen. Again, trash can, not spilling over on the counter, UPS type thing, but his water he was drinking, the case of water he's actually using with a few bottles left. His stove is very, very clean, paper towel rack. And the dishes that they said that he had all dishes, he had dirty dishes. All this is clean dishes. There's no dirty dishes over there. Clean dishes. That's he's looking real good. That's a lamp sitting over in that corner. That's a cutting board. I can tell you still have the knife on it because I remember that. And the cup in the sink and 1 plate in the bottom of the sink. And that plate didn't even have no food on it to sit in the sink. I'm sure that Daniel had to rush out that morning and he left that stuff intending to come back late on the evening and wash that stuff up. You have a dishwasher as well. And this cup, you can tell he left that as well. Whatever he's cutting up, he left his water. He forgot to put it back in the fridge because that water has a filtration system. What he does, he fill it up with filtered water. All right, so that's filtered water. So that's against anything you saw happening on that show. That betrayal that Daniel was going through some mental state because of the way his apartment looked. He is in pain, as his mother would say. But his apartment don't reflect that. Whether he told his mother is 2 different things. Rather, what he done here is another. What we have here, the original pictures of exactly how Daniel's state was when he left for work that day. But anyway, this is rock collection up here. You guys, I talk about that all the time. A little shelf here. Also, this is computer. I told you guys before, this computer here. His computer monitors up here. He got his joysticks here. But like I said, that computer, he just built this computer. He finished it 2 days before he went missing. He and I was on the phone multiple times talking about his computer. He asked me, I'm a computer major myself. He asked a lot of information from me to help build. He was building this computer. He did it himself, got lights going on, and he's very proud of it. Just finished it before he went missing. Only thing you guys can look at is this bathroom is clean, shower clean, toilet clean, bathroom floor is clean. You see a little couple things dropping right here. Couple things. You can tell this drawer was open. Somebody must have pulled something out, and then they shut the drawer because the cord is stuck in there. But nevertheless, this cord here leads to an outlet because you can see the little broom piece right here, but I'm showing you the other side. There's a broom here again. The cord is still running here too. This vacuum cleaner. One of the things that was pointed out to me by Jeff McGrath, my former investigator, is that his appearance is Dan was cleaning up, sweeping, cleaning, and he had to probably leave in the middle of vacuuming that floor because nobody would have that there all the time, just walking around that vacuum cleaner for one thing. Other part, he pointed out these facts that certain things was on top of the cord itself, indicating that something happened after that vacuum cleaner ended up there. Also, some stuff was on the other side of that vacuum cleaner as well. But you guys can, I'm showing you a different angle from this. Everything's on the floor. It's going to look terrible when I turn to the next one. It looks horrible. Things all over the floor, thrown on the floor. Investigative standpoint, somebody's looking for something. And the reason why I feel that, because this box right here is taken out the closet. This cabinet right here is moved to the side. Things is falling all on the floor. This drawers is open. I'm sure the rest of them have been in the past. Cut that was probably most likely up there is on the floor as well. But this part he's speaking about, this one thing was tilted sideways. It was damaged. It's damaged because whoever looking for something or whatever the happen case may be damaged it. So going back out the other direction, so he had his clothes in there. Somebody was digging in there. You could tell they pull it back this way towards us, the angle we're looking at this picture, to look for something at the bottom of the basket. His shoes is there. Like I said, this box of stuff, all that on top of the cord. So I just wanted to point those things out to you guys. It's totally different from what you guys was led to believe watching that episode. It really hurt my feelings because that's not Daniel. We teach him to be clean. That's not clean compared to what we're used to. And so I get his mother's point as in him should be more tighter, but that's typical Daniel. He's very messy sometimes. He can be.
And, I will say this, in all the cases that I've covered and people I've encountered over the years in missing persons cases, your situation is very unique in a sense that you have a lot of resources put in place, well, as far as social media, how you get yourself out there. I mean, I know it was kind of a struggle in the beginning, but it's been very cleverly done as far as just staying active and just being on top of what's happening. So have you been able to, I guess, pass that information, how you went about that along to other families? Because I think a lot of times when people have these types of things happen to them, they really don't know what to do, so to speak. And they just kind of figure it out as they go. If you can give people really a quick check sheet and say, hey, this is what you need to do, get this out here as soon as possible. I mean, have you been able to kind of create that synergy or that situation for families so far? I mean, I'm sure it's learn as you go, right? So
it is definitely learn as you go. And one of the things I have in mind is doing just that, like some type of check sheet, some kind of pamphlet or something that will help families, especially when they come to the Daniel Robinson Foundation website. There will be some keys there for families to be able to follow. But in the meantime, I have been able to help 2 families so far. Not many families to give them the exact things that I have done because they asked. But 2 families so far was able to utilize some of those things that I talked to them about. So I'm really grateful for being able to do that now, being able to talk to the families and try to make sure I help as the way I can, saying give them advice, tell them what I have done, the struggles that I have gone through, what not to do or what to do. So those things are very helpful. But going forward, yes, I plan to do that as well, make some type of sheet. Because like you said, nobody gets any kind of information when they have their loved one missing. It don't come with a pamphlet. It don't come with a cheat sheet. You could say it is something that families have to learn as they go.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel like the situation from this point is gone beyond a missing person? Do you still feel like Daniel is alive out there? Do you feel like there's a foul play situation? Like, what do you feel at this point?
Well, at this point, I feel, and based on everything I know, I feel that it is foul play, of course. But my faith, because I am a person that believes in God, I'm a person of faith, and I believe that even with foul play, my son is alive. Meaning that hopefully, in my view, that I just still need to rescue him from whatever situation it is. But definitely the foul play part of it, I can't see any other way based on what I've seen at the scene, for instance, what I know in the background, and the fact that my son loves his family. He don't have that idea, hey, I just want to, as Buckeye Police Department suggests, join a monastery to become a monk and just to leave his family or to mastermind his clothing on the ground, everything off his body, all the stuff we know about that scene. He did all of that just to leave life as it is. I do not believe that. So I think another force or something else had some input into how my son went missing. But nevertheless, I still have that faith to believe that he's alive.
Has the relationship with Buckeye Police, has it gotten any better, or is it pretty much the same as it's been from the very beginning?
Well, yeah, the relationship's the same. I'm very disappointed with that department. Of course, you guys can know that, first of all, at the beginning, this was assumption that my son wanted to disappear his own that would prompt you to cancel a flight that pretty much would have saved my son's life, possibly. And the thing is to be able to do that to the terms of not helping in the searches, waiting almost 3 days later before they started any search, 2 weeks later after that, There's none act of urgency in my son's case, as well as the damage that was done. No forensics done at the scene. They turned all everything that should be evidence over to me, and marked for safekeeping, as well as the vehicle. So all the damage that was done to my son's case, I don't have any confidence in them, especially when we turn over those evidence to them, the tangible evidence that would suggest foul play. They still calling it a missing person case, and not only that, just double down on what they believe, instead of looking into my son's case as possible criminal. They did a lot of damage, and the only thing they can do for me right now is to turn my son's case over to a different jurisdiction, to a different department that I've been working very hard for. They know who it is, because these people are definitely should have reached out to them. Only thing they have to do is turn my son's case over, do the right thing, but they still refusing to do the right thing. Turn the case over, let the proper hands handle my son's case, try to salvage whatever we can to find my son. The case is already damaged. I just want to be able to find my son.
At this point, the Buckeye Police Department still has information on what they've done on the case posted online. And according to the website, they're doing follow-up interviews with witnesses, checking satellite images, and examining evidence from the crash site. They're also looking into Daniel's financial records and sightings, along with information from private investigators who have worked on the case.
Just to clear things up, too, I know the last time we spoke, there was all of that stuff going on with this young lady who had this this encounter with your son, and, that whole thing about him allegedly stalking her, or whatever the case may be. Have you been able to clean all that up and really clarify what that situation was? Because I know it was still kind of getting cleared up, but I'm just kind of asking you this now, a year plus later.
Well, with that situation with the young lady, my son, like I tell people before, he's told me about her, of course, 2 days before. That's my last conversation with my son. He never did mention any aspect that he was in love with her or in any infatuation. Of course, if you spend a night with somebody, I'm sure there's something there. Of course, that's human. The thing is, as in for my son's credibility, I've been working very hard to work against what Buckeye Police Department, in my opinion, tried to do as a smear campaign to paint my son as some type of stalker, or he's out of his mind, or some way like that. But so I've been working very hard to let the public know the kind of person Daniel is. He's a very loving person. He don't have so much as a speeding ticket. He's a contributor to society, very brilliant young man. So I try to make sure that my son is not caught up in some of those distractions, and also the fact that the Buckeye Police Department chose to allow a one-sided hearsay into their report. We all know that this is one-sided. So we don't see Daniel's text messages. We don't see, and the reason why you guys know that, because his phone been wiped of those text messages as well. But we don't see those things in their report, what my son said, and because those things do not match the phone record. And Buckeye Police Department know that. So right now, my goal is to make sure that this don't become a distraction to what really going on in my son's case. The lack of urgency from the Buckeye Police Department.
So at this point, what's next for you? As far as your plan moving forward? I know you want to help other people. I know you have searches on the way. Is there anything else that you want people to take away from this interview?
Yeah, of course. First of all, sometimes the family get lost into all of this. I know I'm the only one on the ground, and people see my face all the time, but Daniel do have a mother, he have siblings, he have grandparents who's back in South Carolina that love him, that's very concerned about him. One thing is for sure is that me as a father, I'm going to still be here on the ground, do what I have to do to search for my son. And, saying that's what fathers do. But yeah, going forward, I'm definitely going to continue to do that, fight with law enforcement, do what I have to do on that front to get them to do the right things, to treat my son as urgent as I treat him, or I feel. The other part is to continue on helping other families as well, and also to be an advocate for some changes going forward, some changes that I see. For instance, it should not be no wait to 12 hours or before you can report a person missing. It should be immediately, because we ought to know that the first minute a person go missing, it's better more so than just the first 24 to 48 hours. No, it's the first hour that the officer should be starting to go out and start believing these families. These families know their loved ones, so I'm going to be advocating for that, as well as, like I said, helping other families. I have a Million Father March that should be coming up on the 1st of January, or 1st of next year, to bring some light into fathers, especially Black fathers. There's going to be Black fathers because we have a bad stereotype that we don't love our children, we're not there for our families, that kind of stuff. So I want to get all the fathers who are willing to stand up and do things like that, make some efforts to make some changes in the way we're viewed as well.
Any thoughts for your son or people who may know information about his whereabouts or his circumstances?
But yes, if anybody have any information that leads to my son's, to really, if anybody have any information that will lead to bringing my son back home, I urge them to call the tip line. It's 844-602-0660. You can find it also on pleasehelpfinddaniel.com. With that tip line, you can remain anonymous. I pay for that service. It's 24 hours, 7 days a week. Live operators that will take your call. If you don't want to talk to anybody and you just want to be very secretive, you can also text the word tip to that number and the form will come up and you still can remain anonymous. So just want to make sure I bring my son home, make sure that a person being able to utilize that number to, and that's what it's for. It's not for the public. It's for that person or persons that know something that will bring Daniel home.
Have you been getting any tips? I know you have to check out everything, right?
Yes. And it's difficult when I say that. I get all kind of tips from, hey, Ms. Robbins, I think you should search here. Those not the kind of tips I'm looking for, but there's advice, and I really appreciate the advice. But the tips, yes, I get all kind of tips. I get things like people would suggest that they know what happened to Daniel, but turn out that it's more of a ransom type thing for money. So I had to go through those things to kind of vet which is credible and which is not. Of course, as you know, we've been doing some traveling to Sedona, to Flagstaff, you name it. Even have a place in California. There's one sighting in New Mexico, for instance, one in Georgia. So some of those things we have to look into. When I say we, when I have my investigator going forward now, there's some other things I still have to look into. So just kind of breaking those down to see which ones is credible, checking to them to make sure it's worth going out to look and things like that.
Mm-hmm. And my last question for you would be, what are your thoughts to Daniel, and what are your thoughts to the people who have been helping you over this whole course of time? You've had a lot of people really care about somebody they've never met, Yeah,
and I love them back. One of the amazing things, though, is that this is a grassroots effort. When I first came out here, I didn't know anyone. The only one I had was my daughter. She and I would go around and do everything we can to try to do our due diligence first. And so when I reached out to the community reached back, very much loving people. They spent, hours and days out there in that desert, 118 degrees. People still help me as well with the flyer distribution. I get thousands of flyers across this country out weekly. And I have people out there in different states that receive these flyers. We send them out and mail them to their residents. So to be able to get those flyers and people coming together as a community, as a nation, in a sense, in my opinion. I have people from the Netherlands to Germany and you name it, UK, even some from Russia will come out and reach out and try to help as much as they can, whatever they can do online, spreading the word. So everybody play a key part to what I'm doing here. And I love them very much, and I'm very grateful for them.
All right. So at the end of the day, you won't stop until you get the answers you need, at the end of the day. David, thank you so much for talking with me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for your time.
When it comes to my final thoughts about this case, there's really nothing final about it. The family is still swept up in a whirlwind of questions surrounding Daniel's disappearance. While they do have some evidence, the biggest key, though, is finding out whether or not Daniel walked away from a crash or encountered a bad situation on June 23rd that led to his disappearance. And while David has his own suspicions about what may have happened, along with the possibility of foul play, police still have Daniel's case listed as a missing persons case. David says he is still raising money to help in his efforts while helping other families who are also searching for their missing loved ones. As for the future, there's still a lot to be done in this case in the days to come. David says he's planning to hold a march for Black fathers in January of 2023 to help eliminate the stigma of Black dads not being around for their kids. I'll keep an eye on this case and let you know what happens next. If you have a case that you want me to check out, just visit me on the Intrigued Full Effect website or email me at intriguedfulleffect@hotmail.com. Until next time, be safe and stay true. The views, information, or opinions expressed during the Intrigued, Full Effect, Curious Cases, Disappearances, and Other Stuff podcast are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of the host. The primary purpose of this podcast is to educate and inform. The host of this podcast assumes no liability or responsibility for any activities in connection with opinions shared in the podcast. The podcast and blog associated with it shall not be used in any legal capacity or as a basis for expert testimony. Any copyright material in the podcast is approved by the owner or is part of the public domain. Music by Pond 5.